Hey, we're in the last week of our series called At the Movies. Now, every week since we started this series, we talked about and gave the reason why we even show or talk about movies in church. And here's kind of the reason why we even talk about or show movies in church, and here's why. Movies often reveal truths about life, people, and God, but without the baggage of attached to religion or faith. Listen, when you and I or your friends or people go to movies, they'll see situations, they'll see characters, and they'll see themes that are true about life, they're true about people, and they're true about God, but there's no baggage attached to religion or faith, and so we can experience some truth. And so listen, we talked about this. We said, every week throughout the whole series, we said, listen, here's one thing we know is true. Our love for movies reveals the truth that every single person wants their life to count. That all of us, whether you have no faith, a different faith, or some faith, everyone wants their story to be a part of a bigger story. And then we ask, well, how do we become the hero of our own story when we live everyday normal lives? And we also ask the question, how do we avoid becoming the villain in our own story unintentionally? And so if you missed week 1, week 2, or week 3, it's okay. As long as you have internet and there's electricity, you can go onto our website or our YouTube channel and you can catch up there. And so today we want to talk about something about the movies that you love, that I love, that we love. The movies that you remember, I remember, and we remember. The movies that stir our soul, the movies that melt our hearts. There's something about great movies that you, me, and we love. There's a truth in there that we discover in all the movies to remember, and there's a common theme. And here's the common theme. Great movies always have great friendships. Think about this. When I was a little kid, I was always in trouble. I was awkward. I didn't have very many friends. So I was always kind of in my room on restriction. So I read lots of books. I read lots of comics. And then later I became kind of a movie fan and kind of a TV addict, and I love things. And I discovered that all the great movies, all the great stories have something in common. They have great friendships. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Anybody here old enough to remember Star Wars, the original Star Wars, not all the mess-ups, right? The original Star Wars, right? But I remember the scene at the end of Star Wars. Luke Skywalker is not the hero by himself. He has Han Solo and Chewbacca and R2-D2 and C-3PO and Princess Leia. They're a squad. He is not a hero by himself. Now, some of you are like, man, that you must be old. Yes, I am. That's okay. We're not going to talk about that today, right? Maybe some of you grew up when The Matrix was hot. Remember when The Matrix was the big deal? And Neo was the one, but Neo didn't do it by himself. He had Morpheus and he had the Oracle and he had Trinity and he had Link and Tank and Dozer. Even Neo, the one, had a squad that he went through his journey with, because no one is the hero alone. And maybe not that, maybe this one, maybe the next one. I think it's Harry Potter, right? Anybody Harry it's okay to raise your hand if you're a Harry Potter fan in church. It's okay. Right? Like any of you Harry Potter fans, but listen, even Harry Potter didn't do it by himself. Like he had Ron and he had Hermione and he had Ginny and he had Neville. Like even though he was the great sorcerer or whatever it was that he was, like he had a squad. He had a group of people. Anybody remember Catching Fire and Katniss? Remember that her? Like she didn't do it alone. She had Cinna and Haymitch and she had Effie. She had a squad, because no one is a hero alone, right? Listen, even if you watch kids movie, one of the greatest kids movie that they're making in number 4, Toy Story, right? Woody isn't even a hero by himself. He's got Buzz Lightyear and T-Rex and Slinky and Pig, and he's got a crew, because no one is a hero alone. There was a blockbuster movie, Black Panther, and he wasn't the hero alone. He had M'Baka and Okoye and Shuri. He wasn't a hero by himself. And then, spoiler alert, like if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame, that's on you. Like, bro, it's been a long time, right? So even in the end of Avengers Endgame, when Captain America utters the word us nerd fans have been waiting for a decade through the movies, when he says, Avengers, assemble. Okay, that's great. 3 of you said that. That's great. That didn't work as well as I was hoping, right? When he stuttered those words, Avengers assemble, the only way they defeat the villain is not individually, but as a group of friends. And through all these great movies that you remember, through all the great movies that we love, through all the great movies that touch our soul and stir our heart, there's an obvious theme that no one is a hero alone. that friends and friendships are absolutely required for your story to be a part of a bigger story. If you, if I, if we want our lives to count, meaningful and genuine friendships have to be a part of our story. And so today we're going to take a look at a movie clip from the Guardians of the Galaxy, where the main character is trying to be the hero, but without his friends, he would fail. So we're going to dim the lights, and I'm going to ask that you would give your attention to the screens. In the movie clip that we just watched, the hero, Peter Quill, grabs an energy that he cannot control that would kill him all by himself. And the only way that he's able to handle that power is because a group of friends grab a hold of him. And without his friends, he is unable to defeat the enemy who is going to bring destruction. And I think in that single clip, we see a great example of life. We're meant to live a certain kind of life, but we can't do it without genuine friends and friendships in our life. It teaches us that no one is a hero alone, which leads you and I to our opening truth this morning. If you're following along in your insert, movies debunk the myth that heroes don't need anyone. You see, here's the problem. Somehow in Western civilization, somehow in our current culture, there's this idea that if you're a hero, if you're heroic, that you don't need anyone. And that if you do need help, if you need support, if you don't have all the talent, if you don't have all the great ideas, if you don't have all the abilities, then you are weak or you are a failure. But movies debunk this myth that heroes don't need anyone. I mean, I'm going to tell you something that you already know. We know this intuitively. Matter of fact, it's value number 4 at SouthPoint is we are better. We're better together. We can do more together and we become more when we're together. But for some reason in our current culture, and it's not just our culture, but since the beginning, for some reason, human beings believe that if you're going to be heroic and you're going to be the hero of your own story, you shouldn't need anyone. It's just false and it's just wrong. And it leaves you and I asking a sticky question this morning. How do we not let a false myth keep you and I from the friends and the friendships, not only that we want, but that we need to become who it is that God meant for us to be? And there's some good news this morning. It's why I'm a follower of Jesus. It's why I love God, and it's why I'm grateful for the Bible. You see, God knew that you and I would struggle with it. And not just you and I, but that probably on every continent, every generation, every culture, people have struggled with this idea that we should need other people. And so God addresses this. Matter of fact, one of the greatest heroes of the Old Testament, a historical figure named King David. And through this series, we've talked about how he was the hero in his own story and how he became the villain in his own story. And in his story, we see where he wouldn't have made it without friends. So we're going to turn our attention to Samuel. We're going to put it up on the screen. It's on the back of your insert. And so King Saul saw and urged his aides and his son Jonathan to assassinate David. And you might be asking, why would the king want to assassinate one of his servants named David? Well, remember, David became the hero in his own story when there was a giant named Goliath who taunted the armies of this nation called Israel, and he was going to defeat them all. The army was going to be on the run. The only person brave enough and willing to go fight this giant was David, and David slew Goliath and caused a great victory. And Saul became jealous because he knew David was going to be the next king. So he says, listen, I know he's going to be the next king. Everyone likes him. So he got jealous and he said, we should assassinate David. But Jonathan, because of his close what? Jonathan and David were friends, and they were friends because they were very similar. Matter of fact, Jonathan had taken a step of faith earlier where he had brought on a great victory. They were very similar in their ideas, and so they just naturally clicked. They were great friends. And because of his friendship with David, he told him what his father was planning. So his father was planning, Saul was planning on killing David, and because Jonathan was friends, he goes to David and says, listen, David, my dad is planning on killing you. You need to, and we pick up the rest of the account. Tomorrow morning, you warn him, you must find a hiding place out in the field. So he goes to David and he says, listen, we're buds, we're best friends. I don't know, my dad's going crazy, but he wants to kill you. You need to run, and we pick up the rest of the account. The next morning, as Jonathan and his father were talking together, he spoke well because he was his friend. He's like, listen, Dad, what are you thinking? and he begged him not to be against David. And he said, here's why you shouldn't be again. He has never done anything to harm you, Jonathan pleaded. He has always helped you in any way that he could. He's been a great friend to you. Why would you want to kill him? And then he goes on to explain this. Have you forgotten about the time that he risked his life to kill Goliath and how the Lord brought a great victory to Israel as a result? You were certainly happy about it then. Why should you murder an innocent man? There is no reason for it. And Saul eventually says, okay, I won't kill David. And this is a time where Jonathan, literally because of his friendships, saves this guy David, who eventually becomes the king of Israel, who's known in the Bible as a man after God's own heart, who literally his succession of sons leads to Jesus. But David might have not survived without his friendship with Jonathan, because no one is the hero in their story all alone. And here's what's amazing. King David's son becomes a king, and his name is Solomon. He was known one of the wisest men to ever walk the earth. In a book called Proverbs, he writes these words: one who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin. You see, when you and I don't have friends and friendships, and I'm talking about genuine friends, I'm not talking about acquaintances at the water cooler or acquaintances at the gym or at the coffee shop or acquaintances at church. I'm talking about somebody who knows you and still likes you. We call it the kind of friend that you could call when you need them to drive the getaway car. Right? If you don't have that kind of friend, you come to ruin. One is because you don't have everything you need to get through life, because no one does. And second of all of us, no matter how talented, good, strong, you will face a season in your life that you will need the support of others. That's why King Solomon, one of the wisest, says, if you don't have reliable, true, you will come to ruin. You won't end up to where you're supposed to be. But there's a friend who sticks closer to a brother. So how do we have these kind of friendships? How do we have the kind of friends and friendships that will allow us to become all of who God made us to be? And here's the funny thing. I think church people and Christians often get this right. And we always say at SouthPoint, like we have buckle up moments, so I'm going to say something that's probably going to be offensive, so I just need to go, bing, buckle up, okay? All right, because I often hear this. I often hear, you know what, Pastor Matt, I don't need other people, it's just me and Jesus. It's just me and Jesus. And you know what, that sounds so religious, but it is the most spiritually untrue thing that you could ever say. Here's why. Jesus, God's Son, God in the flesh, was the only person who didn't actually need anyone. Yet Jesus chose to have 12 friends the whole time he was here. So I want to ask a question. If you think you just need you and Jesus, how come Jesus had friends? Are you better or greater than Jesus? And the answer is no, just in case. And so today we want to look at some things that Jesus modeled so that you and I can have the friends and then friendships that we need to complete our story so we can be the hero, because we'll never be the hero we're meant to be apart from having friends and friendships. And so I want to make 3 observations that come straight from Jesus, okay? And here's observation number 1 straight from Jesus. Friendships don't just what? Friendships don't just happen. They require intentionality. They require work. They require effort. You need to be able to find a friend. Like, friendships don't just happen. They require work. They require intentionality. And if you don't believe me, just take a look at what Jesus did. We're going to take a look at the eyewitness account of the Gospel of Mark, and it says, as Jesus walked along beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting net into the lake for their fishermen. So Jesus is on the move. He's on the search. And he finds, they don't find him, he finds Simon and his brother Andrew. Come follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you to fish out for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. They didn't find Jesus, Jesus found them. And it didn't just stop with these friends. Jesus found the next group of his friends. When he had gone a little bit farther and he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John in a boat preparing their nets, without delay he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with him and the hired men and followed him. Friendships don't just happen, they require intentionality. We have to work for them, we have to find them, we have to be a part of the solution. And part of the problem, if we're really honest, is this seems intuitive. Like, friends don't just happen. It takes work. It takes effort. But if we know that, then why doesn't that happen? And here's why it doesn't happen for me. And maybe this is why it doesn't happen for you. But here's why, and I want to put it up on the screen. It says, the daily grind and grit of life will rob us of the friendships that we need and want, right? Like, listen, if you're here and you're adult, the daily grind, I mean, that's work. That's school. That's chasing after kids, right? There's the activities. There's a band concert. There's a soccer practice. There's a ballet practice. You got to sell pizza at your work for their stupid things that you got to raise money for, right? Right? And then there's all kinds of other things, like you got to go shopping, and someone's actually got to cook the food, and somebody's actually got to wash the dishes, somebody's actually got to do the laundry, somebody's actually got to pay the bills, somebody's actually got to mow the lawn, and man, you actually need to get sleep, and like the grind of daily life for adults can fill us and rob us from the friendships just because it seems like there's no time. But there's something else, and the grit of life can also, and I often call this, the grit is kind of this thing. And listen, I was talking to a friend one time, and they said, that person's crazy, and I said, just wait, I just want to let you know something, everyone's crazy. And they're like, you really believe that? I go, have you met people? So everyone's flawed. Everyone's got crazy. We just hide it from each other the best we possibly can, and some are better than others, right? I call this the grit of life. Listen, everyone has their own quirks. I have my own quirks. You might say, oh, Matt, you seem like a great guy. If you get to know me, you might be like, oh, dude, I don't want to hang out with you because I have my quirks. You have your quirks. We have our quirks. And then we all have our own flaws. And part of the hard part of having meaningful, genuine friendships is there's the daily grind that keeps us busy. And then if you have your quirks and you have your flaws and I have my quirks and I have my flaws, it is hard for us to be friends and find friends, but it doesn't just happen. If you are waiting for it to just happen, it will never just happen because the grind and the grit of life will keep you from the friendships that you need. Now, I need to stop and I need to say something hard. I'm going to offend probably everybody in the room, so I don't mean to, I don't like to, this is not what I want to do, but I just need to be truthful. Because I've heard this thing so many times, I need to address it. And here's the thing when it comes to friendships that I've heard so many times at church. I'll talk to someone who's come to SouthPoint or went to another church, but they don't go anymore. And so I always ask, well, why is it that you left? And they go, well, I showed up to church, but I didn't make any. And I thought church was a place where I could make, because the church is supposed to be a friendly place, right? So I thought I could make friends. And then here's the part that I always ask people, and here's where everyone gets offended. And so I'm trying to emotionally prepare you. So when they go, I didn't make any friends, I go, oh, that's interesting. So I ask this question. I go, hey, did you know at SouthPoint we have this thing called small groups? And kind of the way you get connected outside the Sunday morning experience is every week we have a group of people that get together, and that way you have a group of friends, and when life happens, you don't have to call the church office. You got a group of people who are doing life with you. Have you done a small group? Well, no, that's not for me. I'm too busy. I go, oh, okay. I go, if you're too busy during the week, did you get involved in a serving group where you could meet some people who maybe had some similar things with you, whether it's driving big trucks for the pit crew, or maybe it's like working back with the kids or handing out, like, did you serve anywhere? Well, no, I really didn't find my place yet. I go, oh, okay. I go, did you join the volleyball team or the softball team? No. So I said, so let me get this right. You left the church because you didn't make any friends, but the only thing you did was come on Sunday, sit in a chair, and then leave. Well, yes. Okay, good. Friendships don't just happen, they require intentionality. Which leads me directly into observation number 2 about how to have the friends and friendships we need, is you have to be a friend you want to have. Like, listen, come on, you already know this. Listen, this is what I taught my kids in elementary school. To have a friend, you need to have a friend, you need to. And I am amazed at the number of grown adults who go, well, I'm trying to have a friend. And I go, well, have you been a friend to anyone? Or are you just waiting for someone to show up at your doorstep and going, man, you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. Let me be your bestie. At some point, we have to be the friend that you want to have. And isn't this what Jesus modeled? He was the friend that his disciples weren't. We see this encounter with Peter, one of his closest friends. And we're going to put it up on the screen here in Luke. Simon, Simon, which is Peter, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you. I mean, that's a friend there. Jesus looks at Simon and says, listen, you're about to hit a really rough patch. But don't worry, I've taken time out of my day, out of my morning. I got up early and I prayed for you. Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Jesus knows Simon's quirks, that he's always sticking his foot in his mouth, and he knows his failures. He knows that all of his disciples on the night he's betrayed are going to abandon him. And look what Jesus says. But Peter replied, Lord, Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and death. And then Jesus responds to him and he says, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times that you know me. And yet Jesus is still his friend. And it begs to ask the question, are we being the friend that we want to have? I promise you, if you want friends, instead of looking for friends, just start being a friend that you'd like to have, and I promise you that you will start to develop friendships. True story. I go to the gym, and I probably should get my money back, but I like it. I work really hard in the gym, and I like going to the gym because I get to meet people who typically don't go to church, and I have these acquaintances, and when you go long enough, you get to meet people, and so there's this one guy, he spots me, and I spot him, and sometimes we work out together, and so in the course of a conversation, he was telling me, man, I bought my first house. He's a single guy. He's a little bit younger guy, and he says, I'm buying my first house. I'm so excited, and so, whenever I see him, I go, how's it going? He says, well, it's getting built. I can't wait, and then soon he's like, listen, I got my date where I'm going to sign for the house and I'm going to go in, I'm going to get to move. I'm so excited. I was like, man, I'm so excited for you, so proud for you. And then he says, man, I bought my house. I'm so excited. I'm going to be moving in. And he didn't ask me to move. But in that moment, I realized if I was telling someone that I assumed was my friend that I had bought a new house and I was moving, I should offer to what? To help. And so I didn't want to, but I did. I don't like moving. And by the way, I don't help people pack things. I'll move boxes and heavy furniture. I don't do the other thing, okay? Just so we're all clear there, right? So I told my friend, I said, hey man, listen, my life's full, but you're my friend. If you need help, I'll help you move. He's like, no man, I got it. I'm like, no, I'm serious, man. Text me, call me, let me know when you're moving. So we ran into each other a couple times and said, hey man, don't forget, let me know when you're moving. So he texted me the date he was moving. I kind of stopped in the middle of my day to go do something to help him move. I was the only person from our friend group at the gym that helped him move. Be a friend that you want to have. Just be friendly. Smile. Just be the friend that you want to have. Don't be an Eeyore. And listen, finding friend takes time. And I'm not saying that you should have friends who will use you and abuse you, but I am saying you should be a friend, and if you see people that are using and abusing, then you kind of just stop that train and you go on and find a healthy friendship. But if you don't have the kind of genuine friendships you hope to have, maybe you need to be the friend that you wish to have. Which leads me into the third observation about genuine friendships and friendships that we need, and it's this observation. Genuine friendships come with the cost of transparency. And this is the hard one. Because we don't mind if people know the us that we want everyone to see. The put together self, the right self, the self that isn't crazy, the self that isn't quirky, the self that doesn't have failures. We don't mind people knowing that person. But the problem is you never really have genuine friendships if people don't see the real you. If they only see a projection of you, then they only know the fake you. They don't really know the all of you. And I love that Jesus displays this. Matter of fact, before Jesus is crucified, he takes his 3 closest friends so that they can see him for who he truly is. We're going to pick it up in the scripture, put it on the screen. Eyewitness account of the Gospel of Matthew. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John. That was his inner core. Those were his closest buds. And the brother James, and he led them up on a high mountain by themselves. So it was just the 4 of them. And there he was transfigured before them. It says that he began to shine white, and whiter than anything could bleach, and he looked like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. And then we continue on. And just then appeared before them Moses, Elijah, talking with Jesus. So all of a sudden, Jesus takes off his human suit, and we get to see him as God's one and only Son. They get to see him for who he truly is, because they are his friends. At some point, if you're going to have genuine friendship, you have to take off the mask. Your genuine friend has to see your quirks and your failures. They have to know, did you have a bad day? And you don't lie and go, yep, it was great. That you tell them the truth. I didn't really learn how to be a decent friend until I was probably into my mid-30s. And I didn't probably have my best friend until the end of my 30s, early 40s. But I remember one time I was having breakfast with someone that I considered a friend. And we were really just acquaintances. And I remember the moment when we crossed from acquaintances to friend, because in this meal, as we were talking about life, this person, this one who was an acquaintance who I would have considered friend, began to share some hard things about their life that I didn't know. And in that moment, I felt privileged. It was an honor that someone felt safe enough with me to go, hey, this is what is truly going on in my life. You get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I believe that you will still be my friend. It is costly, it is scary, but there is no true friendship without transparency. So the things that Jesus models for us to have friends and friendships, to be able to have the life that we're meant to be, that Jesus models. One is, friendships don't just happen. They require intentionality. Be a friend that you want to have. And that genuine friendships requires transparency. That people have to see not just the good that we want them to see, but all of us. If I was going to sum it up in a single sentence, here's what I would say about the whole message. Going it alone isn't heroic. Because that's what many of us buy into, right? That's the false myth. That it's heroic to go it alone, but it's not. It's not heroic to go it alone, it's harmful. And you might be asking, well, how is it harmful to go it alone? Well, think about this. If you go it alone, then you don't get to experience the benefits that somebody else could bring into your life, the goodness, the talents, the things that they have. You miss out on what somebody could add to your life. And in the same way, you miss out on what other people could add to your life by doing it alone. Someone else is missing out on what you could bring to their life because you are choosing to go it alone. It becomes a lose-lose situation that not even Jesus himself did. Going it alone is not heroic. It harms the very life that you and I were meant to live. Close a little true story here. I've kind of alluded to multiple times on Sunday that like when I was younger and little, I was awkward. Growing up, I didn't really have friends, and I didn't have a lot of friends because mostly I had a single mom. We were not very well off, and so we moved a lot. I was incarcerated, and I was just awkward. And if you get to know me, like I have decent social skills, but they don't come naturally to me. Sometimes I just stick my foot in my, like I was just an awkward kid, so I didn't have a lot of friends. And so again, I mostly spent a lot of time in my room or out in the woods kind of with imaginary friends. Imagine that. And so most of what I learned about life, I kind of learned before I was a Christ follower through comics and books and through movies. But there was this book series that when I was a little kid that I read called The Lord of the Rings. Anybody ever hear of that? Okay, great. 6 of you had, and the rest of you need to get on board, right? So The Lord of the Rings was a movie series. It's a book series. It's a trilogy by J.R. Tolkien. And it's a great, amazing story about this hobbit named Frodo. And it's a very long story that I won't bore you with on a Sunday morning, but there's this ring that he's got to destroy. It's an evil ring, and if he doesn't destroy it, the world's going to end. Frodo's got to do it. But the most amazing thing about this is Frodo's journey goes through 3 books, and Frodo eventually destroys the ring, and he has this group of people around him. He has this amazing wizard, Gandalf. He has this kingly guy named Aragorn. He has this Legolas elf who can do all kinds of amazing warrior things. He has this sturdy dwarf named Gimli, and he has this best friend, Sam, who really has no talents. And at the end of the book, Frodo destroys the ring. And everyone applauds Frodo as the hero of the story. And I distinctly remember after the first time that I read that book series that the hero for me wasn't the amazing wizard. It wasn't the kingly Aragorn. It wasn't this amazing warrior elf. It wasn't this tough dwarf. It wasn't even Frodo who stuck it out and carried the ring. It was Frodo's best friend, Sam, who stuck with Frodo and wouldn't leave him no matter how hard the journey got. Sam didn't leave his friend Frodo regardless of his quirks and his failures, and there were many through the journey. And it left me with this distinct thing that the hero of this trilogy, the true hero, is the hero that we all want. That someone would know us with our quirks and our failures, and that someone would be willing to stick with us through all life's ups and downs and be a true and good friend. Because genuine friendship is a priceless gift that we all need and want. And yet, if we were all honest today, the grind and grit of life often robs us of the very thing that we need to experience the life that Jesus died for. And that's why value number 4 at SouthPoint is we're better together. And so here's my encouragement. Please don't settle. Try. Take a step. Take a step toward engaging friendship. Don't settle for the best friendships being fictional characters on a screen. Because you and I will never become all the hero we were meant to be in our stories without friends or meaningful friendship. Let me pray. God, what's amazing is that you want to be our friend. That is the whole story of the Bible, is that you created us to be friends, and we stiff-armed you. We left you. And the whole Bible is a book about you pursuing your lost friends. And when the only person who could have done it alone, Jesus, showed up, he didn't do it alone. Because friendship matters. None of us can be the hero of our story alone. God, I pray today, wherever the grind or the grit of life has caused us to settle for less than meaningful, genuine friendships. God, if there's been a hurt in our past, if there's been brokenness, if we've settled for less, God, I pray today that we would take a step towards friendship, a step of friendship towards you, God, because without you, we won't be able to make it, but also towards other people, because going it alone isn't heroic, it's harmful. This is our prayer. In Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen.
If you're ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey or continue to support SouthPoint, you can connect to a small group, serve on a team, and give financially by clicking the box on the right. To watch other sermons from SouthPoint Church, click the playlist on the left. Click the logo to subscribe.